Have you ever felt like an object was watching you? I never believed in that kind of thing, until the day I found the box. It was just an ordinary Saturday. I was helping my grandma clean out her attic. The dusty old space was filled with junk, broken furniture, moth-eaten clothes, and piles of yellowed newspapers. As I sorted through a stack of musty cardboard boxes, something caught my eye. Tucked away in a corner was a small wooden box. It was about the size of a shoebox, made of dark, polished wood. Intricate carvings covered its surface, twisting vines and strange symbols I didn't recognize. For some reason, I felt drawn to it. "Hey Grandma," I called out, "what's this box? I've never seen it before." My grandmother hobbled over, squinting at the box through her thick glasses. Her face went pale. "Oh my," she whispered, "I'd forgotten all about that. Put it back, dear. Don't open it." Of course, telling a curious teenager not to do something is the surest way to make them want to do it even more. As soon as Grandma's back was turned, I slipped the box into my backpack. I'd take it home and check it out later. That night, I sat cross-legged on my bed, examining my prize. The box was heavier than it looked, and warm to the touch. My fingers tingled as I ran them over the carvings. I noticed a small brass lock on the front. For a moment, I hesitated. Maybe I should listen to Grandma's warning, but my curiosity won out. I had to know what was inside. I grabbed a paperclip from my desk and bent it into a makeshift lockpick. After a few minutes of fumbling, I heard a soft click. The lock sprang open. My heart pounding, I slowly lifted the lid. At first glance, the box seemed empty, but as I peered closer, I saw something nestled in a velvet-lined bottom. It was a small figurine, carved from some kind of pale stone. It depicted a creature unlike anything I'd ever seen, part human, part animal, with too many limbs and eyes in all the wrong places. Just looking at it made me feel dizzy and nauseous. I reached out to touch it, but before my fingers made contact, the figurine moved. Its tiny head swiveled towards me, and I could have sworn those carved stone eyes blinked. With a yelp, I slammed the lid shut and shoved the box off my bed. It hit the floor with a thud. For a long moment, I sat frozen, staring at the box. Had I really seen what I thought I saw? It must have been a trick of the light. Figurines don't move on their own. I was letting my imagination run wild. Shaking my head, I picked up the box and set it on my dresser. I'd take a better look in the morning. Right now, I needed sleep. But sleep didn't come easily that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that strange little figure, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. The next morning, I woke up groggy and irritable. I'd tossed and turned all night, plagued by weird dreams I couldn't quite remember. As I got dressed for school, my eyes kept drifting to the box. In the light of day, it looked perfectly ordinary. I must have imagined the whole thing. I reached for the box, planning to open it again, but as my hand got close, I felt a wave of dizziness wash over me. The room seemed to tilt and spin. Stumbling back, I grabbed my backpack and hurried out of the room. I'd deal with the box later. At school, I couldn't focus. My mind kept wandering back to that strange figurine. What was it? Where had it come from? And why did Grandma seem so freaked out by the box? When I got home that afternoon, I went straight to my room. The box sat exactly where I'd left it, innocent and unassuming. Taking a deep breath, I approached it. This time, there was no dizziness. I must have been more tired than I thought this morning. I picked up the box, surprised again by how heavy it felt. My hands shook slightly as I opened the lid. The figurine was still there, resting peacefully in its velvet nest. It didn't move. Of course it didn't. I'd been seeing things last night. Feeling a little silly, I picked up the figurine. It was cool and smooth in my palm. Now that I got a better look, I could see how beautifully crafted it was. Every tiny detail was perfect, from the curve of its many limbs to the alien geometry of its face. Who could have made something like this? As I studied it, I felt a faint vibration. The figurine seemed to be getting warmer, and was it my imagination, or was it ever so slightly bigger than before? I blinked hard, and everything looked normal again. This was getting weird. I needed answers. Setting the figurine carefully back in its box, I headed to Grandma's house. I found her in the kitchen, baking cookies. The familiar scent of cinnamon and sugar filled the air, but today, it didn't seem comforting. It felt like a mask, hiding something darker underneath. "Grandma," I said, "I need to talk to you about that box from the attic." The cookie sheet clattered as she set it down too hard. When she turned to face me, her eyes were wide with fear. "You took it, didn't you?" she whispered. "Oh child, what have you done?" Over cookies and milk, she told me the story. The box had belonged to my great-grandfather, a collector of rare and unusual artifacts. He'd acquired it on a trip to South America, from a dying shaman who warned him never to open it, but of course, he did. After that, terrible things started happening, Grandma said. Accidents, illnesses, strange noises in the night. Your great-grandfather became obsessed with the box. He'd sit for hours, staring at that hideous little statue. It was like it was draining the life out of him. She shuddered. When he died, we locked the box away in the attic. I thought it would be safe there, forgotten, but now you've let it out again. I tried to laugh it off. Come on, Grandma, it's just an old box with a weird statue inside. It can't really be cursed or anything. But deep down, I wasn't so sure. The memory of that figure moving, of the dizziness I'd felt, made my skin crawl. That night, I dreamed of the statue. In my dream, it grew larger and larger, its twisted limbs stretching out to fill my room. Its many eyes blinked at me, and a mouth I hadn't noticed before opened wide, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I woke up drenched in sweat, my heart racing. The dim light of dawn was just starting to creep through my window, and there, sitting on my chest, was the figurine. I scrambled backwards, tumbling out of bed. The statue hit the floor with a soft thud. It didn't move. Had I sleepwalked? Taken it out of the box in the night? I didn't remember doing that, but it was the only explanation that made sense. With shaking hands, I picked up the figurine. It definitely felt bigger than before, and warm, like it had been sitting in the sun, but that was impossible. It had to be my imagination playing tricks on me. I went to put it back in the box, but froze. The box was gone. I searched my room frantically, but it was nowhere to be found. How could it just disappear? Over the next few days, things got stranger and stranger. Objects in my room would move when I wasn't looking. I'd hear whispers when I was alone in the house, and the figurine kept growing. I tried to get rid of it. I threw it in the trash, but the next morning it was back on my dresser. I buried it in the backyard, only to find it sitting on my pillow that night, covered in dirt. I even tried smashing it with a hammer, but the stone wouldn't break. And all the while, I felt like I was being watched. Every mirror, every dark corner, seemed to hide lurking eyes. I couldn't sleep. I could barely eat. I was jumpier than a cat in a room full of rocking chairs. My parents started to notice something was wrong. They said I looked pale and tired. They asked if I was feeling okay, but how could I explain what was happening? They'd think I was crazy. Maybe I was crazy. Maybe this was all in my head. But crazy or not, I knew I needed help. I went back to Grandma's house. She listened to my story without interrupting. When I finished, she nodded gravely. I was afraid of this, she said. The box is gone because it served its purpose. It was just a prison for the thing inside. Now that it's free, it's growing stronger, feeding off your fear. What do I do? I asked, my voice cracking. Grandma sighed. There might be a way to send it back, but it's dangerous. Are you sure you want to try? I thought about those alien eyes watching me, about the terror that filled my nights. I have to, I said. I can't live like this anymore. Grandma nodded and went to a cabinet in the corner. From behind a stack of old cookbooks, she pulled out a dusty leather-bound volume. This was your great-grandfather's journal, she explained. He wrote down everything he learned about the statue, including a ritual that might banish it. We spent the rest of the day preparing. Grandma gathered strange herbs and powders from her garden and kitchen. I drew symbols on the floor with chalk, copying them carefully from the journal's yellowed pages. As the sun set, we were ready. The figurine sat in the center of the chalk circle, looking innocent and harmless. But as Grandma began to chant in a language I didn't recognize, it started to change. It grew larger, its limbs stretching and twisting. Those horrible eyes blinked open. staring at us with malevolent intelligence. The air grew thick and heavy, the lights flickered. I heard a low, rumbling growl that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Grandma's voice grew louder, more insistent. The figurine was almost as tall as me now, its monstrous form barely contained by the chalk circle. Tendrils of darkness reached out from it, probing at the boundaries of its prison. My head spun, the room seemed to tilt and warp around us. I felt like I was falling, drowning in an ocean of shadows. And then, suddenly, it was over. With a sound like thunder, the creature vanished, the air cleared, the lights stopped flickering, and there, in the center of the circle, was a small stone figurine. Grandma sagged, looking exhausted but relieved. "It's done," she said. "We've sent it back where it came from." I stared at the little statue. It looked exactly like it had when I first found it, harmless, ordinary, but I knew better now. "What do we do with it?" I asked. "We lock it away," Grandma said firmly, "somewhere it will never be found again." The next day, we took a long drive out into the countryside, miles from any town. We hiked deep into the woods. There, in a small clearing, we dug a hole. We placed the figurine in a new box, wrapped in chains and locked with 7 different locks. We buried it deep, then covered the spot with heavy rocks. As we walked back to the car, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. The feeling of being watched was gone. I could breathe easily again. But sometimes, late at night, I still dream of those alien eyes, and I wonder, is it really gone? Or is it just waiting, patient and eternal, for the next unlucky soul to set it free? So let me ask you again, have you ever felt like an object was watching you? Maybe you should take a closer look at the things around you. You never know what might be hiding in plain sight, waiting to be awakened. If you love horror stories, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe.